Well, it's that time again for the Autosportradio.com 2016 show, presented by Honda and Honda HPD. Founded in 1993 to spearhead Honda's entry into IndyCar racing, Honda Performance Development has overseen successful racing efforts at all levels of the sport, from karting and quarter midgets to IndyCar and prototype sports cars. HPD offers race engines and competition products for professional, amateur, and entry-level racers. For more information about HPD and the company's racing product lines, please visit hpd.honda.com. That's hpd.honda.com. A couple things to mention. I want to congratulate my friend, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago that Ted Bidding, if you know him, has some very serious health issues, but he was invited to the Speedway under the pretext of something, and he was awarded by Firestone the Tire Guy of the Decade. And he's a super guy, and he was really quite surprised at the award. Might also mention that Ralphie the Racer and Jane now have a great-granddaughter. A grandson, Joey Ligori, and his wife Lindsay had a daughter, Emily Jane. Sunday, I believe it was. And if you have aches and pains anywhere in your body from head to toe, do what I do. Go see Dr. Rob Schroeder. He's up at Guyan and 86th Street. You can make an appointment. His number is 317-388-8755. And for those of you who are museum visitors, in December when the Roger Penske display leaves, they are going to bring in automobiles made in Indiana, both race cars and street cars. They'll have a display of that until March, and then March, A.J. Foyt's display comes in. So if you haven't been over there, take a look at Roger. Go in and look at the cars that were made here in Indianapolis. It'll be a phenomenal display, and some of the cars they're going to have never been seen in public before. They're from private collections, so it should be pretty interesting. And if you want to know what's going on with the world of IndyCar and the Mazda Road to Indy, do as I suggest. Sign up with tracksideonline.com. They give you all the information. You'll get all the PR stuff from all the teams. You'll find out what they see and what they hear, and it's a great thing to do, and it's not that expensive. So go to tracksideonline.com and sign up. Now, my first guest, a gentleman I've only been hounding for 4 or 5 months probably, but that's typical, because when you're successful, you move fast. That way you can't get hit. I met him initially in about 1996 when the Indy Racing League started, and he was the general manager or team manager for Team Extreme, and they had an attorney driving the car, John Hollingsworth Jr., and his dad and I got to be pretty good pals. We used to hang out. Fortunately, I didn't get in trouble for it, but probably could have. But John has got, as I made mention of, if I put his resume on the website, there wouldn't be room for anything else. He's a graduate attorney from Duke Law. He was in the Army as a helicopter pilot. He worked for attorney's office in 93 to 97. He was president of Lopes and Associates. He was the general manager of Team Extreme, as I mentioned, executive vice president of operations for CART and Champ Car World Series. And he was the chief marketing officer at Andretti Autosport and has now taken over that and put together a company, LST, and one of their acquisitions, or whatever it is Grand Solutions, which is Ruthie Forbes and Gene Cottingham. I'm very happy to have this young man here. Please welcome Mr. John Lopes.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be back after 5 or 6 years.
Well, you have, everything you've done has been, you don't take a shortcut to anything. I mean, you go in the Army and you're a helicopter pilot, you're a brigade commander, if I'm not mistaken, on several occasions. Then you worked in the law office and must have thought, this is exciting, however, and have been now involved in sponsorship, event production, all kinds of things, but not necessarily like you started in motorsports. You now have diversified. In fact, you've got an office down in Florida.
Yeah, so funny, I got to tell you about my first job in racing, because I'm very proud of it. So I got the racing bug when I went to Talladega. I saw Dale Earnhardt drive, and I fell in love with racing. And when I was in law school in North Carolina, luckily enough I was in North Carolina, so I would bang on the doors of, at that time, Winston Cup teams and volunteer. and nobody would give me a job until one day this team owner, his name was Steve Dixon, said, you really want to work in racing? I said, yeah. And he goes, and he handed me a broom. And he goes, sweep the floor. So I swept the shop floor, and then I learned how to change gear oil. And then I learned how to change gears, but I put them in backwards, so they took me out of that, and I realized I was destined for marketing. But yeah, for all those years in North Carolina, for 3 years, I volunteered every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for race teams, doing everything from carrying tires to working on cars and eventually being a client services guy in the Cup Series. And so my background was in NASCAR for many years before I ended up in IndyCar in 1998.
Well, I was going to leave that part of it out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
Sorry.
you know, just bypass that thing. But you and I have something in common. I worked for a race team, and I found a broom fit me very well.
Yeah.
and I actually worked my way all the way, I hope nobody's listening to this, to polishing the car.
Oh.
Huh. And I got to push it.
Great.
And I got in it once and got to steer it out Gasoline Alley out to the pit area, and I was so excited I almost fell out of the car.
Yeah, they let you touch the car. They never let me touch the car.
Well, that wasn't smart of them, but I threatened them. As an attorney, you went to law school, you worked for several law firms, but what you're doing now, does law fit into it?
Every day. And I don't practice law anymore. We're lucky enough to have a couple of good ones. In fact, Wes Zirkle, who is the former general counsel at Just Marketing, joined us recently, and he's the best racing attorney that I've seen. And he's brought a lot to the table. But we joke around that we seem to do more law now than we ever did as lawyers, because the business is really deal driven. So even though you might not be drafting the contracts, you're in them every day. You have to understand them. You have to understand how sponsor deals work, how to protect the clients, especially sponsors these days are pretty sophisticated on that stuff.
You're also in the entertainment end of it.
A little bit.
Doing what?
So when we bought the company, we felt like it was important to diversify. We had a strong lineup of corporate relationships, for example, like Volkswagen, and we wanted to diversify in and out of racing so we could offer the sponsors sort of a broader platform. And a lot of the chops that you have to do good racing deals apply to other spaces. So, for example, we represent companies now in the music industry, in volleyball, in golf, as well as this year in cycling, the USA Cycling sponsorship we manage this year. So we're in and out of different sports. We're in and out of different types of entertainment. We've done a lot of radio-based advertising work recently. But at our heart, because if you remember, we ran Milwaukee Indy Fest in Baltimore, and most of us were event junkies because we came from kart, so we had run events our whole life. We're still event junkies. We're still doing events and working in arenas around the country now.
Did Grand Solutions join and become part of your business, or did you buy them?
We bought Grand Solutions. They became part of our business. Ruthie and Jean are partners now in our communications company.
Well, now, if anybody what happened?
Which was
what happened to? We're dead. Hello? Oh, there we are.
There we are.
If anybody's fillings fell out, Dr. Tom is up here. He can take care of it right across the street. That wasn't me.
So Ruthie and Jean, who, as you know, have been a long time involved in kart, Champ Car, and IndyCar over the years, we got together. They were looking to grow their business. We needed the communications competency in the company. We got together, but we acquired the company, and they're now part of LST and doing a great job. To give you an idea, some of the clients on the communications side, we're working with companies like Lamborghini, Porsche Club of America. We represent IMSA. So when you go to the IMSA website, you follow any of their races, including the one here in Indianapolis. All that content comes from our office here in Indianapolis, as well as the Porsche Club, and anything to do with racing for Lamborghini in America comes from our folks, including their social media.
So in other words, you don't represent Slippery Rock Racing. You a company. You've got some top
Well, we love slippery rock racing. So, you know, a good example is, it's not slippery rock racing, but, you know, for example, the Bird brothers, Jonathan Bird.
That's right, you put that together.
Yeah, Jonathan Sr. is a good friend of mine for many, many years. He's passed now, but that became a relationship with his kids. And, you know, to give you an example, it's obviously a story with a bit of a sad ending, but earlier this year, they came to us and said, listen, we have two things we want to accomplish this year. We'd like to be a sponsor all year in IndyCar, and we would like to sponsor Brian Clausen for 200 races. So we got together with them and with David and Jonathan Bird and put that deal together. So, yeah, we were at the 500 this year with Clausen and a couple other teams that we had done deals for, but we also, you know, we're on the short tracks all around the country as well. So, you know, again, in addition to event junkies, we're dirt track junkies, and we love the sport.
I have to. Well, that's got nothing to do with us.
I could try and talk louder. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Can you hear me, Eldon? No. Sit down. I have to think that, at least in my opinion, I've known Ruthie since she was a young girl, and I think she's one of the best. Do you guys still, are you associated with St. Pete?
No, we're not. What happened with St. Petersburg was initially started by Barry Green and then Michael Andretti when Andretti Green Promotions was formed. That's right when I joined the company in 2005, and I actually moved at that time to St. Petersburg and lived there for 6 months and pretty much every year for a few years. But then Michael Andretti sold Andretti Green Promotions to Kevin Savary and Kim Green. They now own it. Both Kim and Kevin have moved from Indianapolis. They now live in St. Petersburg, and they own that event. They own Toronto, and they also own Mid-Ohio now. So they're, you know, outside of IMS, Savary Green is probably the largest promoter in the sport now.
What got you into starting your own company doing this? Now, as a general manager of a race team, you know, when things don't go well, you get yelled at.
Yeah.
Now, if things don't go well, they can't find you because you've got people in between. But what got you into this line?
I think it was just when you're in racing, whether you're running a sprint car team or running a short track or running St. Petersburg or running an operation as big and successful as Andretti has been over the years, you get this entrepreneurial spirit in you, and you enjoy building things, you enjoy teamwork, you enjoy, unfortunately, like the risk of the business. It's something that you learn to adopt to and adapt to as well. And so that it was really driven more out of a desire to grow something fresh.
When you were going to Duke Law, was this in the back of your mind, or you go to law school, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to end up being arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court?
So no, this is a true story. So I was an Army officer, and they do not teach you how to be an entrepreneur in the Army. Like you don't learn that. And then I'm in law school, and this is true. I used to sit in the back row of law school, and I could never pay attention. And I swear I was daydreaming about racing. And I used to play NASCAR trivia, and I would like send a little note card, you know, who's Ricky Rudd's sponsor, right? And most of these kids were from the Northeast. They didn't know anything about racing. But what happened is my mind drifted off to sponsorships and racing, and I wasn't excited about being a lawyer. And eventually, you know, I walked away from law practice full time in 1997 to pursue racing full time.
So I won't be seeing you arguing a case in the Supreme Court anytime soon.
No, you won't see that. You won't see that.
Does having the experience, and how the hell did you pass? If you're passing cards with guys and not paying attention, how did you pass the course?
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and I really got lucky. I was blessed to go to work for a firm in Dallas, where my mentor was the general counsel of the Dallas Mavericks, and so that's where I was able to marry. His name was Doug Atkins. Don Carter owned the team at that time, and I was able to marry law with contracts, and then I was able to drag the law firm into racing, and that's how I got into racing full time.
How did you end up as the general manager for Team Extreme? They're out of Texas.
Yep, I had a client. Whose name was Tommy O'Brien, and another one named Steve Fisher. They and Rick Sharp, Mike Irwin. They had started Team and Stan. They had all started Team Extreme. They were looking for somebody to run the company. They asked if I wanted to leave practice and come run the team full time, and I did. And I don't know if any of you remember, but Team Extreme was, and we were talking about it earlier, it was John Hollinsworth, Davey Hamilton, Ayrton Dare, Mike Groff, and Jacques Lazier. We had some great drivers. We never won a race, but we finished 2 quite a bit back in those days. That's back in the days when Panther was very dominant.
Well, I might mention that Ayrton Dare was Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
And so was John Hollinsworth.
Yes, they both
actually.
were, yeah.
So that's a feather in your cap to accomplish that.
Yeah, it was some of the more fun times in racing.
Do you miss that part of it, or do you enjoy what you're doing and putting programs and teams and sponsors and so forth together? You find that more enjoyable, or did you like the racing part?
I think I'd be lying to you to say, I've been away from the race team environment now for a year and a half. I think I'd be lying to you to say that I don't miss it a little bit. It was particularly strange at the Indy 500 this year to not be directly affiliated with the team, especially with a bunch of guys that I had been with for over 10 years racing at the 500. But we like the company building part of it. I think it's the first thing. And the second thing, for any of you in the sport, that your travel schedule is brutal. And I've got 2 young daughters, and I've got an older son and an older daughter, but 2 young daughters, and I was away from them for hundreds of days a year. So the past year's been pretty good. I've been able to spend time with them, and it's been a nice break. But you do miss the fight. You do miss the every Sunday putting on the armor and going up against the Penske's and the Ganassis, which is the fun of the sport.
Why do you have an office in Coconut Grove, Florida?
Well, we ran 2 years ago the Miami E-Prix, which was the first time Formula E came to Miami. They hired us to run the event. We had a sales guy who was particularly good at the time, and we had also somebody from the marketing staff who was really quite good. At the time, we had clients there as well. DHL was a client, and AutoNation, who's still our client, is there. So in servicing our clients, we opened the office, and now we've just got 2 very strong people working out of the office there. They picked a good spot, and it's definitely the favorite lunch spot for everybody on the stop.
How often you walk in the office and say, "Geez, I got to go down to Florida. I got a meeting," and you get on a plane and leave?
I'm heading down there Thursday, so but that's more to do with my daughter's fall break than work. I get down to the Florida office 3 or 4 times a year, but typically it's for meetings for clients, and it's always a good excuse. My partner Stark Taylor, he loves boats, and so he's always looking for an excuse to get down there to Florida. But we don't seem to get a lot of recreation in when we're there.
Mean to tell me you haven't picked up a client, a boat manufacturer? Come on.
No. In fact, the first St. Pete race we did, actually, we had a few yachts parked out there back in those days, but things have slowed down on the boat side.
It's interesting what goes into putting a race together, getting sponsors and making sure that they can, get business to business if that they want, or they want to entertain. There's a lot involved in it. Most people don't understand. They see a tent and all these people and say, "Well, gee, that's wonderful." They don't know how they got there or why they're there or what the purpose is. And you have to tailor a program to the company, because all companies don't want the same thing. Some of them just want to entertain when they're around the country, bring people, and others look for business to business. And strangely enough, as I think we just read here recently, that Arrow, who sponsors Sam Schmidt and James Hinchcliffe, has really done a lot of business to business. It's worked very well. Yeah,
they've done really. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have been to a street race? Show of hands. Maybe half. So it's. I'm not sure how to describe it, but as you know, it's a different type of an event than you would find at an oval track. And some of the oval track races we ran, we ran Milwaukee for 4 years. Back when we were in kart, we were the guys that put up the lights in Milwaukee, and that was a real labor of love. But street races, to your question, are really complicated to put together. I mean, they always begin with some type of drama that forms in the city and some type of public-private partnership. So when we did Toronto, for example, we had to do a deal with the province. If you remember, this was back in a few years ago when Toronto was shut down for a year. We came in, bought the event, and we had to do a deal with the city, with the province, with the park, with the tourism authorities. Then Honda Canada stepped in, and once we were able to package millions of dollars of deals, then we could announce the race. And then you have to shut down a city, shut down the streets, build a stadium, not upset the neighbors, not interrupt business, and then a race breaks out and a party breaks out for 3 days. Then you got to tear it all down without upsetting everybody on top of it, and go home and come back and do it the next year. We're pretty envious of groups like the Pacers, where it comes game time, they show up and their stadium's built. But for IndyCar street races and all the promoters that do these street races, companies like Long Beach, who've done it forever, they're the gold standard, you know, they have perfected the art of building a stadium, putting on a party, tearing it all down, and doing it in a way that's friendly to the community. And it's expensive and complicated.
Did you have anything to do with Boston? Were you involved in that at all?
No, we were not. We were not. We offered our help, but they I think they thought they had it figured out, and it didn't really work out, unfortunately. And I will tell you, there were some early signs there that things weren't right. And you know, we were involved in Baltimore before the schedule was unable. You know, college football kind of messed up the schedule, but Baltimore was a super complicated event. And looking at Boston from afar, that event was probably twice as complicated as Baltimore, with all the different things they had to do permit-wise to make it happen.
Well, I was surprised. One of the excuses they had, or one of the reasons the city or somebody put a stop to it, was they were in a historic district, and it might flood. Well, only if it rains. I mean, it rains there anyway. That somehow I read that and went, something doesn't sound right here. They're scratching at ways to put an end to this.
There's always, anytime you have a street event, there's a lot of politics, and you've got to make sure. Yeah, you've got to make sure that the constituents are taken care of. I mean, all the way down to if it's Fred who sells hot dogs on the corner and you're going to interrupt his business, you got to find out how to help Fred's business thrive in the street race environment. And you add those constituents up, you're talking about hundreds of people that you need to do deals with and befriend in order to make a good street race work, which shows off a whole different style to IndyCar racing. And it's one of the reasons why some of the street races like St. Pete, like Toronto, like Long Beach have really thrived, because they've really done a great job of taking care of the community.
How did you get somebody from Just Marketing? I mean, that's a international organization, and they are humming along. He didn't like living in England?
No. We've known Wes Zirkle for a long time. I got to tell you, I know Zach as well, and Zach has really established the gold standard in sales and sponsorships and activation. Wes is somebody I got to know over the years through the Bar Association, somebody we thought would be a great ad for our company, and I think he was looking to grow. He was the general counsel there, and for Chime, he was on their board who acquired them, and we had an opportunity to bring him in as our chief operating officer, so there was a great fit. It took a while for us to recruit him, but he's really lifted our game.
Is the boss man talking to you still? Are you still friends with him?
Well, I haven't talked to him in a while, but I will tell you, we had a great run. I mean, we had a great run for 11 years together, and won a lot of races and 3 Indy 500s and 3 championships, and we still cheer for the team. It was great to see Andretti win the 500 this year. It was great to see Rossi win. Rossi's one of our clients, and it was great to see him bring it home. So we have friends over there that we talk to literally every day.
Well, I was thinking more of the boss at Just Marketing.
Oh, that boss.
When you steal his top guy.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some big things in line for that boss, and he just announced himself that he was stepping down from that company. I don't know if you know this, but he's stepping down from Chime, and his role and his oversight of Just Marketing was announced 2 weeks ago. So I think you're going to see some good things out of him in the future. I have heard from him, and I have a lot of respect for him.
Is there any chance you'll be working with him, or he'll be working with you?
Zach, if you're listening, we want to work with you. And so in the future, he's somebody who. The last time I met with Zach was at his house a couple of years ago when IndyCar was talking to him about being CEO of IndyCar, and he decided he wanted to go to London, and he wanted to be closer to Formula One, and that's really where his focus has been, is in Europe and Formula One. And so I think he made the decision at that point. It's not that he didn't love IndyCar in Indianapolis because his family was here, but he decided to pursue big things over in London. And I think we're going to see a lot of big things out of him in the future.
Well, would it make sense? Sponsorship for Formula One is $200-300 million. IndyCar, it's $5 million. I think there's got to be a bigger commission in one than the other, but that's just my thought.
There is, but that means they're $200 million harder to sell.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And there's not a lot of companies that'll spend that kind of money. And IndyCar, I'm not saying this because we're in Indy, and I'm not saying it because I'm an IndyCar loyalist, but it is the best value in racing. It's the best racing in the world. And, the oval product and the Indy 500 is the absolute creme de la creme of racing anywhere in the world. It's the best value for sponsors, and we're doing our best to help inject money into the sport still.
Good. And you represent Alexander?
We've done a little work for Alexander on his personal services deals, and we've worked with a couple of the drivers in the paddock this year. It's been fun.
I'm trying to get Alexander, since he's back signed up again, he ought to show up every once in a while. So if you happen to talk to him, say, look, Tuesday night's looking for you.
You need to call Ryan Rigsby because she controls everybody's schedule up there, so you need to twist her arm a little bit to get everybody down here.
I talked to her, and she says you got to talk to Brittany. Okay, Brittany's his gal, I guess.
Yeah.
What's next for you? Where are you guys going? What do you want to do?
Well, for us, a real big part of what we're doing is we're expanding our experiential marketing business. So for those who are not familiar with us, we represent Volkswagen in their racing across North America. So we activate their racing programs. We also activate their cycling programs, and we do a lot of enthusiast-based work for them. They've had an interesting year, and but they're dedicated to racing. For those of you who've seen, Andretti won the Rallycross Championship this past week with Scott Speed, and they're very dedicated on a global basis to rally because it really corresponds with their consumer. So we're doing a lot of work for them. We're hoping to do a little work with the Speedway on a new deal that's not announced yet, but we're working on it, and I think it's going to close soon for next year. Do some activations at the Speedway and around the Speedway, and we're working on a couple of big deals for one or two teams in the paddock right now for next year. So hopefully you'll see more of us at the track and activating on those sponsorships.
That's what concerns me is, they've got, not that they don't have a good marketing at the IndyCar, but they've got some pretty heavy hitters at the Speedway and the series. And if you get sponsorship for the series, you don't have enough teams. That doesn't look good. Somebody's got to work. I mean, I've complained a lot. Why don't you guys help while you're selling? If they want a team, give them a team. If they don't want the series, they want. Of course, nobody listens to me.
Well, no, it's a good point, and I got to tell you, for those of you who might not have gotten to meet Jay Fry or Mark Miles and Doug Bowles at the Speedway, these guys have really stabilized the sport in the past couple of years. I mean, as everybody knows, the sport has had some challenges over the years, but they have really done a good job. And the thing that people don't know, and I think about working with Jay Fry, when we've been running races and at the race team level, they have been active in bringing sponsor introductions to the teams and to the promoters. I can think of every race that we have done over the years, in the past 3 or 4 years, they've been involved in helping deliver corporate relationships, and they've done it on the team level as well. So, although it's very quiet how they do it, and they also they spread it out among all the teams, they do pick up the phone with everybody to try and help them. Ultimately, the teams are on their own, and it's a dog-eat-dog world. I mean, I got to tell you, if you look at the whole economy of the sport, the promoters are getting healthier, the series is getting healthier, but the teams, they're still clawing for dollars, every single one of them. And even the big teams, even the Penske's and Ganassis, they're out there digging and selling every day to get deals to work. And Roger is a good example. Roger has businesses that support his racing, but he's also out there smartly working on business-to-business deals. He's leveraging his NASCAR sponsorships and IndyCar. He's crossbreeding them, so's Chip. And so everyone in this economy is working hard to put the funding together. It's the piece of the business that has to get healthy long term for IndyCar to get back to where it was. The teams have to get healthy. And the dramas that go on behind the scenes on team finances, you could write a book about. It's crazy. And every single one of them, from Chip to Dale Coyne to all the teams out there, are this time of year right now, this is go time for them. I mean, they do not stop. Last race hits and they are on the road nonstop selling, putting deals together, getting creative, risking their personal finances. All of the team owners are diehard to the sport to a fault. You know, they risk everything they have to put cars on track every week.
And Dale's a perfect example of that one.
He's the smartest guy in racing, though, I got to tell you. Dale might be the only guy making money. Like, he has always been Mr. Reliable. Even in Cart's tough days when car count was brutal, I'd call him and go, Dale, we're down to 17 cars. He goes, John, I'm going to bring 2 cars this week. I'm like, Dale, it's Thursday. And he would go, I'm telling you, I'm going to announce my driver at the track. And sure enough, he would always show up, and he'd always fund a car. And the untold story is a lot of that came out of Dale's pocket.
And a lot of it had barbecue sauce on his fingers because he owns Sonny's Barbecue.
Yeah,
he
does.
Bunch of them.
He owns a bunch of Sonny's down in Florida.
Yeah. I've gone in and patronized them on occasion when they run across one.
Yeah.
Formula E, is it here to stay?
I think so. You know, I think Formula E is. Has anybody been to a Formula E event?
There aren't any around here.
So none of you. The interesting thing, it's a different experience in person because, you know, the cars go by, it's like whoosh, and you don't even hear them. And so that part of it's different. But ultimately, motor racing thrives when you're relevant to the manufacturers. And you can see right now that manufacturers are taking a hard look at Formula E. Now, when they first started, there was naysayers on 2 fronts. The naysayers said, these guys are not going to be able to race with battery-powered cars, and they're not going to be able to do street races. But they've proven everybody wrong. And so what's happened is they now have become the company that is figuring out how to race in Hong Kong, how to race in New York, how to race in downtown London. And they're really good at raising money. And so I believe it's here to stay. I think the FIA is behind it in a big way. I think they're revolutionizing open-wheel racing. And I think everybody in racing is starting to look at them and go, uh-oh, these guys, they're for real. I don't think they're out to put anybody else out of business. I just think they're out to do their own thing, and they're doing a good job of it.
Well, I suggested, since you go by, like you said, it's like you're vacuuming the carpet.
Yeah.
You go by.
And that's hard.
Yeah. Well, I suggested, why don't you put a playing card and attach it to the suspension and put spoke wheels?
Yeah.
Like you used to do with a bicycle as a kid.
Yeah.
So at least you have something to hear.
It's good racing. They put on a good TV show. And
I
as you
saw
can
it this
see,
weekend.
Yeah, you know, they put on some exciting street racing. It's a different. It's probably the white wine versus beer version of racing, but they've got they've got that spot so long as the manufacturers find them relevant. And right now, manufacturers are starting to do R&D in that series, and that's what matters for funding.
Well, the only problem with it is you have to have a minimum of 2 cars and maybe 3.
They're going to a 1-car format in 18, I believe. So I think they're 2 seasons away now from having the 1-car format, which will be really interesting when that happens.
Is a battery going to fit in this damn thing?
Yeah, I think it's all about battery life. That's
yeah.
what's driving technology now, but that's also what's going to be driving the auto industry. I mean, for those, it'll be interesting. I think if you jump 10 years into the future, half the people in this room own battery-powered cars. I know that sounds crazy.
No, it's not.
But
actually.
I'm telling you, the auto industry there's a sea change going on right now.
In 60 Minutes, they did a program about that, self-driving and battery-powered cars, and they said it's coming.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies are spending a lot of money investing in building it.
I mean, General Motors is a perfect example. They're putting a ton into their battery power, as is Volkswagen.
Well, next time I invite you, I'll expect you to bring a Volkswagen battery in so we can see what they look like.
Sure.
You and about 19 other guys come along.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I chased you, but that's the only way I get
Don,
somebody
it's
to say
great
hello.
to be here. I love your show, and I love what you're doing for the sport, and it's great to be here with all this memorabilia. And now I get to hear Mark, I'm a big fan of his, and I'm definitely one of those guys that turns on the TV, turns the volume down, and turns the radio up. I want to be honest, that's what I do. I know Tony George does that as well. So there's a lot of us who, you know, these guys put on a radio show par excellence week after week.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
Keep an
Don.
eye on LST.
Appreciate it.
You'll see him around. John Lopes.
Thank you.
spite of all of the background noise. Jeez, I think that hurt me. Stop. Hello, 1, 2. I got it. This portion of tonight's show is presented by Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville, Indiana. You got to come to the country to see why the very best prices in the country are at Sam Pierce Chevrolet. You'll also see why Sam is always rated at the top of customer satisfaction. Take I-69 north to exit 34, go east 1 mile, and you'll see them. You won't miss them. Also, if you're looking to give a Christmas present, Christmas right around the corner, you got a race fan or a kid in your house that wants to see what racing is about, you can get a 2-seater ride. You can sign up for it now and do it in the spring. Give them a call. The number is 317-243-7171. Ask to talk to Shonda and mention my name. You get a 20% discount. I'm good for something. 20% off is about what I'm good for. Also, if it's time for insurance, do what I did. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance in Speedway. He's located at 5004 West 16th Street, and he can handle anything. If you got a life, car, your home, or if you own a business or a commercial building, you need insurance, they got it. Give them a call. Number is 317-248-0070. That's VP Insurance, Mike Pardee, 317-248-0070. And if you're as good with a computer as I am, then you need Jack down at Computer Overdrive. He is an absolute genius with computers. As you can see, I've talked about my website, but it's not up yet because I'm not the genius. I got to go down there and spend some time, but they're busy. So get a hold of Jack. They're located at Lyndhurst and Crawfordsville Road on the northeast corner on that little roadway. Or give them a call. The number is 328-0766. And if you're into drones and want to learn a little bit more about them, the back half of the store, Mark has a drone store, helicopters and other RC-controlled airplanes. But if you're into drones and want to fly around and take pictures of your neighbors, he can tell you, he can help you do it. The next event going on for the SVRA will be this weekend, next weekend, I guess, the 13th and 14th down at New Orleans at the 2016 Mardi Gras in October down at the NOLA Motorsports Park. You want to get on down, stop by, you'll see some great vehicles. And if you're a vintage car fan, I highly recommend going to svra.com and subscribing to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. It is a top shelf magazine. You'll find some of the cars that you used to know as a kid. They're still running. Find out who's driving them and who owns them. It's well worth the effort. And I want to mention we have a special visitor tonight who did not come down here for this. It just so happened that it worked out that she brought her sister Sharon back here. They're going to dinner tomorrow. They want to have dinner and they didn't want me to go up there, which I was fine with. I want to welcome Janice Carr from Perry, Michigan. Now, the gentleman that was just being spoken of is with me. He is in a position now that I thought for a number of years he should have been. He's done a fantastic job, got a great group of bandits with him to broadcast races. And if you want to listen, as John just said, you turn the television up and turn the volume down, turn the television on, turn the volume down, and listen to these guys. He is the voice now of the Indianapolis 500 and is the voice of the Verizon IndyCar Series, and I'm very pleased to have him here. Please welcome Mr. Mark Jaynes.
Thank you, Don. Thanks to John for those kind words. We appreciate it, certainly. Thank you.
Anything surprise you this year now that you're in this lofty, high-pitched, air-conditioned office, nice, cushy chair? Anything surprise you when you got there and went, holy smoke, I didn't realize that?
Well, you know, I had the opportunity to watch some of the best in motorsports broadcasting anchor from that chair, and I'm not just talking about the 500, but all throughout the course of each and every season, and Mike King and Paul Page and Bob Jenkins and the late Gary Lee. And I think in terms of seasoning and being prepared for the position, I think I was as prepared as anyone ever was in terms of the roles that I played with the network over the years, and in terms of longevity and seasoning and having the opportunity to pick their brains, and guys like Doug Rice from Performance Racing Network. And while certainly I thought the transition was smooth when you're talking St. Petersburg and Long Beach and Barber and places like that, there's absolutely nothing that can truly prepare you to anchor the Indianapolis 500. It's the single most difficult thing I've absolutely ever done in my life, no question.
Now, I have told people, and they've said you're right, that a lot of your success has been the fact that for 3 or 4 years I was your spotter. And I would feed you information, and you've taken it to heart, and now look where you are.
Well, I have mentioned that so much, I figured everyone already here knew that, so there wasn't any reason to bring it up tonight.
If the truth be known, he's embarrassed that this is as far as I've ever gotten. You know, do you see the series evolving and heading in an upward under the new leadership they have with Mark Miles as CEO? Now, he will tell you, and he's been here and said, you know, racing was not utmost in his mind. He came to the 500, but he's a smart enough guy to put the right people in the right place. And I think you and I talked, I think that Jay Fry was a good move.
Oh, there's no question. And, you know, having been a head football coach, and I live by the mantra that you know, when you get in a position like that, you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Lucky for me, that wasn't that difficult for me to do. But that's very, very important. And we approach the radio network the same way. I mean, no matter how good we might be from that anchor's chair, we're so blessed to have the talents of a Dave First and Nick Yeoman, a Jay Query, Michael Young, all of those people. And I think if you go all the way back to Tony Holman when he first purchased the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, there were, you know, those names like, you know, Wilbur Shaw and Joe Cloutier and names that go on and on and on that were very much responsible for the success and first of all pulling off the first event after World War II, and then putting the right people in the right places to build that event into what it's become. And I think, as John addressed, the stability is the most important thing. And you know, I think also you have a group of people that aren't concerned with who gets the credit. They're just happy that things are being done the right way. When you can lose an event in May, like the IndyCar Series did Boston, and then within days add Watkins Glen back in and make it as successful as it was, and do that in a year where you also, you know, you add, you know, Road America back to the schedule. You announce the schedule shortly after Labor Day. I can't ever remember a time in my 20-some-odd years that in early September you folks can make your plans for 2017 as to where the IndyCar Series is going to be and when. And I think all of those things, the driver and sponsorship and team announcements that we've had over the past few days with Rossi and Kanan and Newgarden and those guys, all of those things I think add up to what you suggest and what John alluded to earlier. The series is on the upswing. It's just a matter of capitalizing on it and keeping it moving forward.
How have you gotten ABC's sports director from local ABC channel, Dave First? How did you get him to travel around?
I have pictures that I'm threatening to share, and it's from his days when he was working for Ed Sorensen and trying to climb the ladder. And there's a lot of things Dave did he's not real proud of, but you know, Dave and I struck up a friendship back when I was involved with the football program at Monrovia High School, and he was covering sports for Channel 6, and we had gotten to know one another at the Speedway during the month of May. And, you know, I can't remember what series of events led to Dave joining us, but I realized when Dave first joined us, first of all, he has a tremendous amount of talent. He's incredibly low maintenance from the standpoint he just wants to come in and do the deal. He provides us a conduit to drivers that his experience in May is invaluable to us in that regard. He gets a lot of access to a lot of drivers. They know him and they trust him. Not to mention the fact it's great cross promotion for us, for Dave First to be seen on RTV6 wearing his IndyCar Radio fire suit. It's a win-win for us. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of, and I can say this with him not here because he doesn't have to either confirm or deny it, but I've acquired a very dear friend that I value. I really do.
I think it's a good thing you said it.
Yeah, I didn't want him to be here when I said that. So.
I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Michael Young was here with Katie Harding.
I remember that show. I watched it. I did. I watched it.
Has he gone in for analysis at all?
I think that would take a team, several days, but that to try to figure out what makes that one tick. But you know what? Again, I mean, to give you an idea what this guy's race day is like, he's pulled in a million different directions throughout the course of the morning. I mean, he has to then take care of all the pre-race festivities, and this year we added as our pre-race festivities. I felt it was important to build up to the command to start engines and bring you at home closer to the event. One of the ways I felt like we could do that was to start carrying the national anthem in the invocation, which we did. Well, Michael, as the on-site host, as the public address announcer for IndyCar, gets that countdown in his ear. So Michael already has his gear on, and he counts me down to those segments so we can hit them exactly. And then when he's done with his pre-race festivities on the PA, he runs back to BSI, who provides our belt packs and whatnot. He throws on his fire suit and runs back out and covers pits. And then he gets out of that stuff quickly when the race was over and then gets back to Victory Lane to host it for IndyCar. So that's a true labor of love, and that's a guy totally committed to the sport. And again, we're blessed to have him. And of course, his sense of humor is sick. It is. It really is. You don't know the half of it. Trust me. You don't know the half of it.
The other thing, and I've heard this from a lot of fans, that he goes out to the Fan Fest or whatever they call the thing, and he MCs that, and people.
He's looking for loose change. He's not really doing anything out there.
Oh. He had his hand in my pocket once. Now I know why. Oh.
No, and you know, you and I have talked about this before. Whether it's Nick Yeoman, Jake Query, certainly me, Michael. I think the thing that makes it work, people talk about, they credit our passion and enthusiasm. You know, a lot of people have jobs. For us, these are destinations. These are accomplishments. These are career goals that we all set forth for ourselves at various stages of our life. And we're just so blessed to be able to do it. And I, you know, not only that, but we're fans of the sport. I mean, we like the drivers, we like the owners, and everything about it. We like interacting with the fans. Michael probably gets to do that more than the rest of us do, certainly one-on-one and face-to-face. But, you know, none of us see this as, oh, yeah, you know, I don't want to do this. I mean, sometimes still after, you know, this my 21st season, sometimes I get up in the morning at the hotel on race day and get ready to walk out the door. And sometimes I just laugh that, you know, this corn-fed kid from Monrovia has reached the pinnacle of broadcasting, and certainly of motorsports broadcasting. And a lot of people helped me along the way, for sure. But it's just for all of us, it's an honor and a privilege, for sure. And I hope that comes across when we produce our product each and every week.
You do a lot of pre-work. I mean, there's a lot of recording. You pick up stuff from a week before and put. It seems to me there's more of it now than there used to be, I think.
Yeah, and what we don't prepare for, we just make up. I mean, we.
Oh, well. That's not bad. That's pretty good.
No, honestly, you know, IndyCar, Mike Kitchell and his staff, they do a tremendous job of coming up with a trackside statistical booklet, and there's a lot of facts in there, and all of us rely on that a great deal. But sure, we pay attention to various websites and whatnot, and we follow, as we said, the sport during the week. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that we can show up, you know, to an event on a Thursday having left it alone when we left the racetrack on Sunday night. There's absolutely no way we can do that, as much as our schedule allows, because again, most of us are involved with covering the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tire. Sometimes we don't get a lot of time to go back to the paddock and kind of dig up stories and ask questions. And so, you know, we've developed, I think, over the past couple of years, some pretty solid relationships with Trackside Online and TSO Ladder and some of the motorsports journalists that cover the sport. And I think that it's been a win-win for us and them. You know, we have them as guests in the booth and things of that nature, and so I think, you know, we've increased our visibility, sold more race teams on what we do and what we can do for them and their sponsors, and as a result, I think it's given us better information, which leads to a better show, which is, I think, the end goal, providing the best product possible for the fans.
Well, I was thinking, I forget which race was rain delayed.
Almost everyone this year.
Well, there was one that was Texas.
Texas, yes.
And while they're making their mind what they're going to do, I was listening, and it reminded me when Tom Carnegie was calling 4.5 minutes of Bobby Plumpstand holding a basketball. He said, I couldn't think of a lot to say. I had to say something. I couldn't be dead silent. And you guys have the material that you could fill in until you get the official word it's off and we're done, and you pack up and go back to the hotel.
Yeah, we came up this year with some vignettes that I think add a little flair and a little flavor to what we do and how we do it. You want to talk about a team of therapists trying to figure out what makes someone tick, and Michael Young. I think we could chase them out of therapy by forcing them to figure out what makes Jake Query tick. And,
oh boy!
But Jake, we came up with a thing called Getting to Know this year, where Jake basically just goes on pit road during the race weekend with a driver, and he asked Joseph Newgarden, what was the last movie that you watched that made you cry? He'll ask a driver, if you're going to eat something that's not healthy for you, what would that be? And it's just an opportunity for us to allow the fans, or give the fans a chance to get to know them as someone other than a race car driver. Let them find out that there may be things that they have in common with Alexander Rossi when they think they may not. They may have the same taste in movies or clothes or food or whatever. And, we got a lot of positive response from that. And I think the drivers enjoy it too, Don, because if it's a driver who's not having a particularly good weekend, most everyone in media is going to ask him why. And along comes Jake Query, who's not asking them a thing about how their weekend's going, asking about them as a real person. And I think they've grown to enjoy that, and they liked being a part of it. And I think it was pretty well received by the fans, too.
Just from my own experience, I've had very little, if any, problem wanting to, talk to a driver. Talk to them. A lot of series you can't say that. They won't talk to you. But IndyCar seems to be open. If you guys found it, if you want to do an interview with somebody or ask him a question or find out, what he had for dinner last night, did you have any problem getting it?
Yeah, no. I mean, by and large, most drivers, if you see them in the paddock, you can talk to them because of the fact that depending on who it is, some of the drivers that, are kind of, if you would, the top tier, like a Dixon or a Castroneves or Will Power or someone like that, it's understandable that there's a PR rep there you need to go through because they have a schedule during the course of the weekend. But I will say that over the past 4 to 5 years, the influx, and this is not to take anything away from TK or Elio, those guys, Scott Dixon, none of those guys have ever waved us off. But there's no question that Hinch and Connor Daly and Joseph Newgarden and these guys and Charlie Kimball, they've ushered in almost a new era of accessibility. Now, technology has created that opportunity too, or given them the conduit through Facebook and Twitter and things of that nature. But I know that this series is blessed with a crop of young drivers who've come on the scene over the last 5 to 6, 7 years. Who really do all they can for their fans and the fans of the series as a whole.
I'm concerned. Hinch is doing well dancing or prancing around.
It's amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Good for him.
And last week I had to cackle, and they said, the gal interviewing him, Aaron, I think it was, said, you're pretty good on your feet. Do you do it a lot? He said, no, I make a living sitting.
Yeah.
But what concerns me is he has a house up on the north side somewhere. Connor Daly stays there, and Alexander Rossi stays there. I'm a little concerned about those two guys. They might come out of there talking to themselves.
Well, if nothing else, he might be making some money off the rent, so good for him. He's padding the checkbook a little bit, so good for Hinch. But I think that is a little bit of a throwback to days gone by. When you have a situation like that. I mean, I'm not sure 20 years ago you could have said that, where there were 2 or 3 or 4 drivers, or maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And that's one thing's for sure. I mean, Connor was on Dancing with the Stars last night with Hinch, and Alexander Rossi has been seen, sitting next to the stage. And I remember when Rubens Barrichello first came to the IndyCar series, and I wish things would have worked out for him to stick around a little longer. I believe there was a story where after they were done testing at Sebring, he was given a restaurant in Sebring where he was told that everybody would go to eat. And he was absolutely astounded that all of these drivers from different race teams were all sitting together and having dinner, because that's absolutely unheard of in Formula One.
Hell, teammates in Formula One don't talk.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We've seen a little bit of that lately, but so yeah, I think, boy, there's so many things to be positive about, and no disrespect to anyone intended, but I don't know that it's ever under this banner been as positive as it is right now, and I hope it continues to grow and get bigger and better, and I hope TV ratings continue to improve, and I hope sponsorship deals continue to improve. I'd like to see us add a couple of more venues, and I love the fact that the people continue to listen to what we do and how we do it, and seem to be pleased with it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine, but I do it. Turn on the television to watch it. I turn the volume down and listen to you. Now, I've heard you, and I thought, it's him again. But
that's the response that comes at home too. So don't feel bad about that.
Well, when I called you yesterday, you said, I don't know if I can make it. I've got a honey-do list that's longer than my arm.
Yeah, well, I can't say that that's necessarily accurate because she's here tonight. So. Yeah,
all right, I'm sorry.
My schedule's pretty much my own for the next 2 weeks, so yeah.
Do you see some good talent coming up now? Your broadcast partner, whom you used when he wasn't in the Indy Lights car and Davey Hamilton was tied up, Zach Veach. There's a young man that should move forward, I think.
Yeah, I've got to be pretty good friends with Zach, and it's an honor and a privilege to be able to say that. I was over the moon happy for him when he got the opportunity to test with Ed Carpenter. I know Ed was very high on him. I had the chance to visit with Ed briefly when we changed planes on the way back from Watkins Glen, and they're pretty impressed with Zach. And I know he's been a guest on this show a couple of times, and it's easy to see why Ed was indeed impressed with Zach Veach. He gets it. I mean, that kid was raised the right way, obviously. I've met his dad and gotten to know him pretty well, and it's a wonderful family. He says the right things the right way. But I think it's sincere, and I'm thrilled for the fact that, moving forward, we'll use him as much as we possibly can when Davey's not around. But I'm happy for the fact that, he no longer has to say during one of our IndyCar shows. He would always qualify his observations by saying, "Well, I've never been in an IndyCar Series car before." Well, he doesn't have to say that anymore because he got the test. But I think by him saying that, speaks well of Zach Veach, because he is admitting openly what his limitations are and not passing judgment on those that have done something that he hasn't done, showing respect for them. And that's all you need to know about Zach Veach. But no, if the old adage, good things happen to good people, is at all true, he'll get that opportunity on a more regular basis in the IndyCar Series.
Well, he was here last week and said there's a number of teams talking to him. So, and I hope Ed's one of them, continues to chat with him. Another guy that I think is going to make a mark in this series, and that's R.C. Enerson. They got unhappy with what was going on in Lights and couldn't win the title, so there was no such thing. They moved up, and he did really well. Yeah,
I mean, if he doesn't run out of fuel at Mid-Ohio, who knows where he finishes there. I remembered most of that scenario, but as I often do during the off season, I go back and listen to some of our shows from the previous year and try to make some notes on some things. And I happened to be listening to Mid-Ohio earlier this week, and yeah, I mean, that was a pretty heady weekend for him. And I've heard as a broadcaster of high school football, for instance, last year Mike Kirshner out of Ben Davis. His team was pretty beaten up with injuries, and he put in a sophomore quarterback, and I think his first game he threw for 178 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And I said, what do you attribute that to? And Mike said he doesn't know what he's not supposed to know. He hasn't learned anything yet, so he can't be afraid of what he doesn't know. And I think maybe that was a little bit of where RC was in an IndyCar. I mean, he just got in and drove the thing, and good for him. And yeah, that's a pretty impressive driver. And if anyone wants to question his mettle at any time, go to YouTube and look up his crash at Toronto last year in the Indy Lights Series when he ended upside down in a tire barrier and then got right back in the race car the next day and drove it home to a top 5. I think that's all you needed to know about R.C. Enerson.
Yeah, he's going to be something. I think there's some young talent on the horizon. I mean, let's face it, you don't want to force TK out or Elio, but eventually they're going to pack it in and say, well, I got enough, my wallet's too heavy now. And these guys will get their chances. Hopefully they can stick around and make it happen.
Well, you hope that teams expand to the point where those guys get opportunities before TK and Elio, and those guys move on to do whatever it is, or an Indy-only deal. But I think what Dan Anderson has done and their development team in terms of the new engine chassis formulas, Zach will be the first to tell you he was astounded at the difference in this lights car as opposed to the old one. And I think one of the things it's going to do long term to create better drivers in the Verizon IndyCar series is guys can be a little more patient in the Mazda Road to Indy now. They can spend, a year in F2000, a year in Pro Mazda, 2, maybe 3 years in Indy Lights, and have plenty of seat time under their belt before they move up, which I think is a good thing because that car technically is pretty close to a Verizon IndyCar series now, which is the way it should be.
It's got the paddle shift,
all of that,
stuff, so they learn all that stuff ahead of time, and it's not a surprise when they get there. Are you happy to see Gateway back?
Absolutely. I think it's a great venue, and I saw some stuff on Twitter. They're going to promote the living daylights out of it. I mean, it's nice to go where you're wanted, and clearly we were wanted there. I say we, the Verizon IndyCar Series. It's a couple of hours across I-70. 45 minutes to an hour and a half getting through Terre Haute, because I think in the 20 years that I've been driving to Terre Haute, that area has never not been under construction, so allow it a little extra time for that. But it's a great venue. It really is. It's very competitive. It's a driver's track. Many aspects, guys will compare it to a road or street course because of the amount of shifting. It'd be interesting to see what this chassis and engine package, what the aero kits and everything do at Gateway, but I expect it to be bad fast, and I think it's a very entertaining show, and it's great to see us revisiting some of these venues that have some history, like Watkins Glen and Road America and Gateway for sure.
Well, friends that I have in Chicago and the Wisconsin, Milwaukee area said there was no question in their mind Indy cars were coming back to Road America because that's all they saw every day in the sports page, on the radio and television. They really promoted it, and it worked. Obviously, they know what they're doing because they do it all the time anyway. And
you go into some events, and they're, for lack of a better term, they just have a feel. It feels like an event, and I would say from the first day we rolled into Road America, there was an electricity there. You could tell that anticipation had been building for quite some time, and congrats on their staff and what they did with the Verizon IndyCar Series. And I get it. It's a great venue. It really is, and we just had a blast there and can't wait to go back.
Well, when you go back, you got to go to Schwartz's Steakhouse. If you haven't been there,
I have not been to Schwartz. We stopped at Mars Cheese Castle, which is a must, obviously. But yeah, so
well, that's
some of the guys even stopped on the way up and the way back. So yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, if they have room. Now, Schwartz's is by Elkhart Lake. It's not too far from the track, but from what I'm told, it's still in the cornfield.
We stayed at Sheboygan. That's a neat little town. I'd never been there. We enjoyed it a great deal. And to show you where our priorities are. I mean, like we were watching the NFL, and Jim Nantz made a reference to Joe T. Garcia's in Fort Worth. And of course, I texted Nick a picture from our dinner at Joe T. Garcia's in the stockyards in Fort Worth, because that's a must visit too. So. That's where our priorities are on a race weekend.
Well, I understand that. I understand, especially if you're lucky enough to get Wally to pick up the tab. But
yeah, that hasn't happened since the first Bush was in the White House, but he's still plenty good to us.
All right. Well, speaking for myself, and I know for a lot of people, they're very pleased to see you where you are. I think it's deserved. I think you run a nice. What I like most, and I've told you this, is when something's happened, you don't lay out anything. You've got a guy that says, I've got whoever was in an accident or whatever it is, and you just throw it to him. You don't give him anything. Here, you do it. That's what you're there for, and I like that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I learned years ago I don't get paid by the word. So if I just say now to Nick Yeoman and he takes it from there, that's fine. Now, if they change that policy, you may not be pleased with my throws out to the turns, but no, I mean that's their job. That's what they're there for, and they can do a better job of leading you into the moment than we can. And the response that we have gotten to what we do has been overwhelmingly positive, and we're very, very appreciative of that. And if at any time that focus starts to change. I mean, there's certainly no reason why folks can't, feel comfortable in letting us know, because we're not there for ourselves. We're there for the race fans, and it's not about us, and it's about the event, and that's what we hope you take away from what we do. But we're honored to there's been 6 that have that seat in 64 years, and this is my chapter. It's not my job; it's my chapter, and someone will have one after me. But I'll pledge to do the best I can to make this chapter the best that it can be, for sure.
And he's serious, and he'll tell you, I'll be listening online, and something will go wrong. The picture will disappear, the audio disappears or something, and I'll text him, hey, what's going on? And he'll answer. Yeah. So, they do interact with people. What have you found what your audience has grown to this year?
The numbers that we got from the company that we used, numbers for the 500 was up. Those numbers were up quite a bit. We had, I think, not including a couple of Canadian networks and shortwave radio, we had over 14 million listeners for the 100th 500, just in the United States. And I'm glad I didn't get that total until after the show was over. That might have had a little bit of an impact going into it, as if we weren't nervous enough. But as you well know, there's ways to count what we do on the internet. I think those numbers are consistently good, and I know this: the company we work for, in terms of securing advertising, that becomes less and less of a struggle. And again, I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Kitchell, Mark Robinson, Arnie, Kate, all of those folks with IndyCar PR, C.J. O'Donnell, and certainly the people that we deal with in terms of PR for the race teams and the manufacturers. We've worked very, very hard to get front and center with those folks and sell them on who we are and what we're doing, and the value-added possibilities that we provide for them and their race teams and their sponsors. And quite frankly, there's things that we can do that television just can't. Jim Campbell can't walk into that television booth anytime he wants. They have to find room for him and have to schedule in advance. We can give him time in that booth Friday, Saturday, Sunday if he wants it. And they're becoming more and more aware of that, and that benefits all of us, for sure.
Well, I know I enjoy it. I hoped I was one of the first when it was announced that you were getting the seat. I think it's deserved. I think all the people, all your fellow broadcasters. I think the one exception who's not happy might be K.O. He's probably still a little nervous.
He's a USAC Hall of Famer, and congratulations to him on that, by the way. That was great news. Yeah. Going in with Tony Stewart and Rick Mears, that's not bad company, huh?
When I asked him, how did you get in, he said that was the only name they could pronounce and spell.
Yeah, well, don't let anybody kid you. I know those two, obviously, might be closer to a household name, but certainly in terms of talent and ability, Kevin Olson belongs in a Hall of Fame class with Rick Mears and Tony Stewart. There's no doubt about that.
And if there was a way for him to get ahead of you, he'd take it.
Yep, absolutely.
Take a shot.
Yep.
I thank you for your time. I'm glad that Beech Grove is shut down for a couple weeks. So
that's right.
To do that.
Get to recharge the battery some. We're going to do a little high school football on the IHSAA's website Friday night, and then probably relax a little bit until state championship weekend.
And when is that?
Thanksgiving weekend. It's the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. There's 3 games Friday, 3 games Saturday at Lucas Oil.
Okay, well, I guess I won't get invited to Thanksgiving dinner, but that's okay.
That's you'll get the same invite you got last year and the year before. So.
Well, listen, I always enjoy talking to you, and I appreciate you coming on, and keep up the good work, and tell your team, let's tidy up a little bit and let's go forward and get Michael and have somebody look at him, will you?
We'll do what we can, Don. Thanks for all you do for motorsports, and you're a treasured friend. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mark Jaynes, voice of the Indianapolis 500 and the Verizon IndyCar Series. Next week, I am looking. One of the guests I want to have is an old, not old, yeah, he is too. He's old, IndyCar and sprint car driver, but he broke his foot a couple weeks ago and he's rehabbing. Now, what in the world that has to do with putting a boot? I don't know. But I think he's going to be available next week, and I have another guy who's been out hunting because nobody in the state of Indiana wants him in their club, So we had to go down to Arkansas to join a club to hunt ducks. I think he'll be back. Watch autosportradio.com under the current show tab. When I get them booked, they'll be there. No, I haven't said, because if they don't show up, I look like an idiot. I mean, I can do that myself. I don't need any help. So until next week, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening. Thank my two guests, John and Mark, for being here. Until next week, Don Kay saying, thanks for being here. Good night.